Welcome to the CU 2.0 podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the CU 2.0 podcast with big new ideas about credit unions and conversations about innovative technology with credit union and fintech leaders. This podcast is brought to you by Quillo, the real-time loan syndication network for credit unions, and by your host, longtime credit union and financial technology journalist Robert McGarvey. And now, the CU 2.0 podcast with Robert McGarvey.
How could I not talk with the CUEvangelist, who sees his calling as, and I quote, spreading the good news about CUs, close quote. My interest in the CUEvangelist was initially triggered by a provocative piece titled Black History is Credit Union History. That piece was posted at CU Insight, and then I saw the author, Mark Brantley, dubbed himself the CUEvangelist, so I had to talk to him. Brantley has the chops to warrant that moniker. He's Assistant Director of Operations at Arizona State University, but notably, he is the former Vice Chairman of the AACUC, African American Credit Union Coalition, former board member of CUNA, and former Chairman of the Municipal Credit Union. Yeah, that Municipal Credit Union. Along that path, he has formed strong opinions about what a credit union's mission should be, and he talks about what he believes. All in, this is an upbeat podcast about credit unions and members who need them. Listen up. Let's talk about you, because you are the CUEvangelist, and you said in a piece in CU Insight, Black history is a part of credit union history. How so?
If we look at the way credit unions first began and got its start, it was to meet the needs of those that were financially challenged. Of course, we know they started in Europe and then moved over into Canada and then eventually into the United States. But they always had the philosophy of people helping people. And if there's any group of people that need help, that is Black people. And since the early 1900s, you've had Blacks that were farmers that needed to finance growing their crops and needed financing and were pretty much turned away by banks. So the credit union movement sort of stepped in as a facility to provide capital for and loans for Black farmers to pretty much make ends meet. So in the early history of Blacks post-slavery, the credit union movement played a vital role in making sure that the financial needs of Blacks were met.
Is that still true today?
Well, I would say it is to a certain extent. There's always room for improvement. I think the FDIC came out with a report back in 23 that out of the total number of unbanked Black households, about 10.6%, somewhere around there, as compared to white households that are unbanked, which is about 1.6%. So there is a gap that can be filled, and I believe that credit unions are poised to fill that gap. And until that gap is filled, then our mission is not complete if we truly believe in people helping people.
In the meantime, a lot of small Black credit unions are going away. Does that have any impact on what you're saying?
Oh, absolutely. Because typically the small credit unions have closer ties to the communities. Credit unions thrive and the members of the communities thrive when there's relationship. Small credit unions play that relationship strength versus larger financial institutions that really don't know their members as well as the smaller credit unions. So when you find that smaller credit unions go out of business, then that just expands the gap with regard to meeting specific needs. Smaller credit unions also know the financial state of their members versus larger credit unions that are probably measuring themselves against other large credit unions that are peers. But smaller credit unions know the financial profile of their members and as such can meet their needs better. So as the small credit unions decrease in number, small communities, namely minority communities, suffer as a result of that.
Yeah, a lot of small Black credit unions were related to a church.
Mm-hmm.
And probably the board members of that credit union knew everybody was a member of the church, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And they could make assessments of, yeah, his FICO score looks like hell, but he'll pay off this car loan.
Right. Yes.
And believe it or not, Jim Blaine, this now retired CEO of State Employees Credit Union in North Carolina, second biggest credit union in the country. Jim's always been opposed to FICO scores as the ultimate barometer of giving a loan. He said, it comes down to a person's character. That's
Absolutely.
it.
Yes. Trust.
Some people had some bad luck. Doesn't mean he's not going to pay for his car loan. Doesn't mean he's not going to pay for his roof repair.
That's correct.
Maybe he's having trouble with his medical bills. Different issue.
All right.
I personally wish there were more CEOs like Jim Blaine, but I think I'm swimming against the tide at this point. So back up a second. Why are you the CU evangelist? Where'd you get that title?
Well, a couple of things. I've been involved with the credit union movement for a number of years, going back to 2005, when I initially joined the board of the Municipal Credit Union.
The one that went really bad south?
Yes, for a moment.
Yeah. No, I interviewed the CEO, and I thought he was such a true blue, 100% credit union guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't say, oh, you were on the board, you screwed up. Man, I would have screwed up too. And I don't say that easily. I thought he was such a sincere, honest guy. But oh well.
Never know what's under the hood, so to speak.
So you were on the board of that. Well, I
was on the board.
Huge credit union.
Yes, I was actually the chair for a number of years and was proud of the fact that we were able to bring the credit union from a $1 billion institution to where we were a $3 billion institution when I decided to step down as chair. It was just unfortunate that the credit union went in a direction with a couple of individuals, without going into detail, and you probably know what occurred, caused us to take on a bad reputation. And
you went into receivership, if I remember.
We did.
Took control.
But truth be told, the credit union was still in good financial position.
Came out of that really fast.
Yes, because the numbers said otherwise. Yes.
And the team, I mean, the guy stole, but it was a big credit union. He didn't steal. He wasn't Bernie Madoff. He didn't steal that much.
That's correct. Yes. So the credit union was still in good financial health, but they felt the need to conserve it. And therefore, for whatever reason, they needed to paint a bleak picture of the financials. But the institution was still financially sound. And they took, unfortunately, draconian measures to take it under receivership.
And so when did you declare yourself the CU evangelist?
Oh, thank you for bringing me back to the original question. Well, during that time, even when I was on the board of the Municipal Credit Union, I was also on the board of the AACUC, and I was also a director for CUNA, which is now the America's Credit Union.
Right.
America's Credit Union. So I was on the board for them for about a year. And so I was just rooted in the credit union movement. And as a result of being rooted in the movement, I wanted to do more in terms of advocacy. And that is when I launched Credit Union Evangelist, CU Evangelist. I'm also a minister, ordained minister. So that is where the name came from. When you evangelize, you are spreading the good news. So as the CU Evangelist, I'm spreading the good news about CUs, credit unions. And that's where the name came about.
Renee Sattywhite.
I do. Yes, she is the CEO of the AACUC. Know her well.
Yep. Yeah, Renee's done a couple episodes on this podcast, maybe three. She's a good person to talk to. And
Yes, and a good leader.
and you're right about the origin of credit unions. You go back to the first American credit union, St. Mary's Bank in New Hampshire. It was started by French Canadian guys who were living in New Hampshire. They spoke French. They didn't speak English. The bank said, "My God, these guys work in a mill and they don't even speak English. Get the hell out of here!" Literally.
Mhm.
I mean, God, don't come in this door again, man. So they decided they knew about this credit union thing from France and said, okay, let's try this. And we owe that debt to people who banks did not want to serve. They said, go away.
Mhm.
There's still that population in America today of people banks don't want to serve.
Mhm.
And credit unions have a place there. Now, are credit unions fulfilling that mission today, though?
Well, on its face, it may appear that way. With a lot of the mergers, there's a focus on growth more so than service. And I think we can do a better job. As you may well know, there were allegations of, and I won't mention the institutions, there were allegations. One institution was redlining the African American community. There's been instances of unfair banking practices by others, not meeting the needs of its members, denying loans, pricing loans differently. So I say that to say that, yes, there are some bad actors, but I wouldn't characterize the movement, which I still believe the credit union industry is. It's still a movement. And I still believe in its mission, its philosophy of people helping people. I still believe in the motto, not for profit, not for charity, but for service. There is room for improvement. No question about it. There still needs to be a serious confrontation with predatory lenders. I have always been, even at MCU, an advocate for alternative payday loans. That is something that is drastically needed for people of modest means, especially in minority communities.
Well, we do have that to some extent. QCash,
Mm,
the Washington State Employees Credit Union, CUSO, which they sold to, I think, a lawyer corporate credit union a year or three ago.
mhm.
I mean, QCash makes emergency loans and it charges more interest than a Chase does on a typical loan, but there's more risk involved in it.
Sure.
And and you'll probably understand what I'm saying when I say this. I've talked to like pawn shop owners, people like that. And the point they say to me over and over again is I'm making a loan to someone else that no one else, the banks don't want to lend to, the credit unions don't want to lend to. Yeah, if they can get a loan at a credit union at 12%, they should go get it. So predatory, it's they're not out hunting prey. The prey's coming to them because the prey
Mhm.
has no place else to go.
Yeah.
And I think bankers often they don't see that they are the trigger for this. Am I a fan of predatory lenders? No, I'm not. And by the way, I think payday loans I think are illegal in Arizona. Although we have everything else under the sun, title loans, you name it, pawn shops. We got
Yes.
pawn shops on every street corner. So, but I don't think payday loans are legal. If you got a car, I'll give you a title loan, man. It's
Well, there's no question about the fact that predatory lenders serve a purpose and meet needs, immediate needs. However, you don't have to design a loan to keep a person entrapped in debt. There's enough margin where you don't have to be predatory. You can still make money without having a person live a life of financial servitude, so to speak. So it's the design of the loans of that entraps people that is what's really what's predatory. It's not that they shouldn't make money. Everyone is in the business to make money. But how much money do you want to make? And why would you want to entrap someone in a cycle of debt? So, yes, they do meet a need. And in some instances, they are necessary. But if credit unions and community banks did their job to make sure that there was available capital for those short-term loans, if there weren't banking deserts in certain communities, then you wouldn't have the proliferation of predatory lenders. Credit unions should be mobile, especially in communities such as rural communities. Go to where the members are. Let them see your presence. Let them bank through mobile means. And that, when I say mobile, I'm not just saying through the cell phone, smartphones, but actually go to where your members are in the communities.
What's stopping credit unions from doing that?
Well, if your focus is just on growth and scaling earnings, then there's a shift from the original mission of what credit unions are supposed to do. And that's where your boards are to exercise their governance prowess by saying to the CEO and managers, look, we can make money, we can increase earnings, but we also need to increase service. We need to also increase value for our members because that's what we are in business to do. We started credit unions and they exist to serve. And we have not for profit status. Not that we don't want to make a profit, but making a profit is not the primary goal, is to serve the membership. That's the cooperative model. Members are the owners. And as owners, they should receive excellent service. So the board has to exercise their governance capabilities to make sure the credit union stays on mission and is just not interested in making profits.
Are there enough Blacks in leadership positions in credit unions today? I know Renee Sally used to keep minute tables.
Well, I don't have statistics on that. I know since I've been involved with the credit union movement, there have been, at least on its face, a slight increase in the number of CEOs that are African American. I know that what helps to facilitate Black presence in the movement are MDIs. And minority depository institutions, if they are supported by the NCUA as they are mandated, I think we would see the credit union movement thriving with more African American representation.
Is your outlook optimistic?
It is. I believe that credit unions will stay the course of meeting the needs of people of modest means, despite the fact that you have some credit unions that are interested in growth more than providing value. I still believe in the credit union movement as a whole.
Question you raise, are credit unions staying human as they adopt more technology? Are they?
Well, that remains to be seen. Again, boards must make sure that the institution balances technological advances with meeting the needs of the members. You can't relinquish human oversight to a machine or to an algorithm. There has to be some level of accountability to make sure that members are not shortchanged because an algorithm doesn't have feeling, emotion, it doesn't have history. And when I say history, I'm referring to non standard history. For instance, things that are not factored into a FICO score, if you will. And that's where relationship comes in. That's why church credit unions are more effective. You raised that earlier because they know their members and they know their members are trustworthy. And although on paper, they may not be the best member candidate to receive a loan, but if you know the member and that they're trustworthy, then you would be more inclined to grant the loan, whereas AI may not. So therefore, boards need to make sure that there is oversight with all the technology, especially the fact that AI is expanding rapidly.
Another question you raise is, are we creating access or creating barriers? Which is it?
That's a question that every institution needs to ask themselves as part of their strategic planning. They need to address that question. Are we providing access to members or to those that are unbanked and underserved? Or are we content with the demographic that we are serving because we are profitable? Are we willing to balance access with risk? So those are the things that board members need to make sure as part of their strategic planning session to address those questions.
One of my issues, one of my complaints is that I see credit unions in general as being horribly excessively risk averse. Whereas banking is a risk game. It truly is. It's all about risk. It's about managing the risk intelligently.
Mm-hmm.
But if you hate risk, you shouldn't be a banker.
Absolutely.
And a lot of credit union executives hate risk. They, I'll make you, how much, you have $1 million in a savings account here? Sure, I'll lend you $10,000 on a signature loan. Absolutely. I might even go to 15. Dealing with certain elements of the community necessarily involves more risk than dealing with other elements in the community. And race is a part of that equation, although it's certainly not the only part of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
So I oftentimes I don't think things are racially motivated. I think it's that risk aversion thing happening. It's like, oh man, I can't take the risk.
Well,
So
yes. Mm-hmm.
you agree?
Well, even though it may not be racially, the intent is racially motivated, the impact can definitely be across racial lines. Risk can always be managed. There's nothing wrong with having measured risk, but you do need some level of risk. And risk should not be determined by zip code.
No, you're right. Yeah, it should certainly not be determined by the color of your skin or that goes without saying, but perhaps it needs to be said, particularly nowadays.
Let me just make this point. One of the things that I always used to remind credit unions, I did a couple of sessions for credit union conferences, and from time to time, I was asked to be a speaker. It's always getting back to the basics. And I believe that every credit union needs to have an orientation for every new employee and even a refresher orientation for each institution so that they can know the history of credit unions, the mission of credit unions, and what the credit union movement should look like for the future. And that can only be done if there is a back to the basics orientation.
Be a little bit more specific.
Have an orientation session at the credit union. If you're hiring 10 new employees, including managers and executives, they should be they should be attending this orientation. They should know what the credit union philosophy is. Every employee should know what the credit union philosophy is. Every employee should know what the credit union motto is. Every employee should know, every board director should know the history of credit unions, how it was founded, what was the purpose, how did it come to America? And then also the history of the credit union itself. Why did a group of individuals decide to form a credit union as opposed to a bank? I'm sure there is a story with regard to that respective credit union, and that needs to be part of an orientation process.
Almost all select employee groups were mainly serving blue collar workers. They weren't serving the CEO or the owner of the company. And that's just reality. To some extent, as the SEG has lost its sway in a lot of credit unions, there's less awareness of that. But that's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a bad thing. That's just a thing. It's a politically loaded question that you may decide to duck is there still a place for DEI in the credit union world?
Yes. Well, earlier I mentioned about the gaps, not just DEI with regard to employment, but DEI with regard to financial inclusion. As I mentioned earlier, we have that gap of the unbanked. And unfortunately, Black households lead the pack in that regard. So, and I think there's a misnomer, a misunderstanding of what DEI really is. It's not making everyone equal. It's giving everyone equal opportunity, not equal outcomes. And I think there's a tendency to believe that DEI is forcing equal outcomes and equal outputs as opposed to equal inputs and opportunity. So I think the messengers need to do a better job at the message of what DEI is really about.
So now, where else are you spreading your message?
Well, I leverage social media. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn. So I try to get the message out. That's just my passion of getting the message out about credit unions being a financial institution for Main Street and for the people of modest means.
Do you network with other Black credit union people in Maricopa County in Arizona?
Actually, I do not. However, I should mention this. At ASU, we had the opportunity to celebrate the 60th anniversary of Dr. King and his visit to Arizona State University. And what I was able to do through the generous contributions of Desert Financial Credit Union, and I'm not giving a shameless plug to Desert Financial, but they were the ones that provided the resources whereby I was able to have an exhibit placed in Durham Hall commemorating that moment where Dr. King spoke at ASU during a turbulent period in America during the civil rights era. And of course, Arizona was the last state to honor the King holiday.
Right.
So I thought it would be good to commemorate through this exhibit the courage of not only those that invited King, but also the president, the former president of ASU. His name was G. Homer Durham, who was really a high official in the Church of Latter-day Saints. And he accepted the invitation of King. He didn't have to. And as such, history was made. And King spoke, and that sort of laid the groundwork for the civil rights movement in Arizona. Desert Financial was key in providing the resources to make that happen. So that's an example of a credit union not just serving members, not just serving members of a minority group, but also being rooted and grounded in the community. And that exhibit will forever be at ASU as long as that building stands.
Before we go, think hard about how you can help support this podcast so we can do more interviews with more thoughtful leaders in the credit union world. What we're trying to figure out here in these podcasts is what's next for credit unions. What can they do to really make a difference in the financial scene? Can't all be mega banks, can it? It's my hope it won't all be mega banks. It'll always be a place for credit unions. That's what we're discussing here. So figure out how you can help. Get in touch with me. This is rjmcgarvey@gmail.com. Robert McGarvey again. That's rjmcgarvey@gmail.com. Get in touch. We'll figure out a way that you can help. We need your support. We want your support. We thank you for your support. The CU 2.0 podcast.